Destination Medicine is a joint project of the regional training hubs. This podcast series brings you medical students' accounts of their experience in applying to study medicine. Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Peter Letts. It takes a lot of courage to change mid-career and pursue a medical degree. But that's exactly what Lizzie Del Gigante has achieved. She left radiography behind for a whole new career. Now a student doctor on a rural placement in Orange, Lizzie can offer unique insights into the GAMSAT and then living the regional dream just minutes from work and surrounded by a supportive community. And a research project spells good news for country communities. Lizzie Del Gigante starts by describing the beginning of her medical journey to Nicole Goodman.
I left school with not much of an idea of what I wanted to do. I was definitely health inclined. I loved my science. I was really keen to live on campus. So I ended up doing medical science for a couple of years. And then after that, I moved in to radiography. So I guess it kind of just gave me that, I could work in a hospital, I could work in private practice. After you'd finished doing general radiography, once you got a bit more senior, you could go into things like MRI or sonography, which definitely interested me when I was finishing school.
So then ultimately, what made you decide to switch and become a doctor?
Yeah, so when I was working in Maitland, living in Newcastle, as my grad job, I was working as a general radiographer and a very junior one. We were always working very closely with the ED doctors. We were working up in theatres. We were working pretty closely with some of the orthopaedic registrars. And I kind of started to think, I was like, maybe I like that job a little bit more than my own. I think if you take the emergency doctors, for example, they get the patient right from when they turn up at the door. They get to do the entire workup, the diagnosis and the treatment, or maybe the admission, So I was a lot more interested in that continuous care. But if medicine hadn't have happened, I would have been very happy with my career as a radiographer as well.
Did you have a mentor or someone that helped you prepare when you were applying for the GAMSAT?
Not particularly. I was working at the time, working full-time, and I was a little bit concerned, rightly or wrongly, just about what my seniors or bosses might have thought with a jump in careers. So I definitely decided to keep it quite low key to start off with. I didn't want to miss out on any radiography opportunities. If I missed out on medicine, I needed to keep all those options open. However, I had a couple of friends working as doctors, and my cousin was in about second or third year medicine. So as the GAMSAT came around and applications, I definitely consulted them in terms of navigating the GAMSAT, which is a pretty tough exam, and navigating the applications, which is also pretty complex for someone, it's trying to get into med. It's pretty stressful. But another thing with them, especially the ones already working as doctors, they were really reassuring and really encouraging with medicine as a career, I think, because I already had my career rolling along. I had already started. So moving into medicine was a pretty big step, and a little intimidating, at the thought of 4 years without a salary, and it's a pretty tough decision. So they were very encouraging and reassuring with medicine as a career, which I'm very grateful for.
How did you end up finding the GAMSAT itself, and how did you go about studying for it? Was there a secret to your success?
Yeah, I have no secrets with the GAMSAT. I wish I had some advice there, but I absolutely don't. It's a real lottery. However, I was working as a radiographer, so I was doing shift work, which I think was actually quite helpful. If I was on an afternoon shift, it gave me the day to study. If I had a run of night shifts, that would give me a few days off to do a bit of GAMSAT study. So I found that really helpful, to work out a bit of a study routine and squeeze it in with my work. And conveniently, it was also the first year of COVID-19. So I didn't have much else to do, to be perfectly honest with you.
Benefits. There you go. You then had 2 more years in Sydney, and now you're studying at a rural clinical school campus in Orange. Why did you decide to go rural?
Yeah, so I think, I grew up rural. I grew up in Leeton. It's always been a big part of what I've wanted to do. My partner, conveniently, he also grew up in Orange. He's rural, and he's been really keen to get back to Orange and work in the family business. So that definitely drove my decision. Lots of people talk about the benefits of rural clinical schools, and I was really attracted to the idea of that one-on-one consultant teaching. So when we do our clinical scenarios, that's always a group of 6 of us with a consultant. So it's really, really good. If you look at Orange Clinical School, we have 16 third-year students, 16 fourth-year students, and quite a small staff group. So you really get to know everyone really well. So when I head back to the clinical school for teaching or tutes, you almost need to leave 10 or 15 minutes just for a bit of a chit chat with some of the admin staff as you walk through the door. So everyone's really approachable. If I ever had any troubles over at the hospital, I would never hesitate to go and talk to one of the staff there. And I was really attracted to the lifestyle of the country. People talk about the short commutes. That's true. Mine's about 8.5 minutes at the moment, door to door, which is really convenient. So it was those kind of benefits that going rural was really important to me. And I'm really glad I made that decision.
Last year, you undertook a major research project looking at where students who undertake a rural placement end up years down the track. That's fascinating. What did you find?
Yeah, so the MD project is a really interesting one because we do a 3-month research project, and conveniently it falls in the middle of winter here in Orange. But what my project was on was looking at rural clinical students like myself and rural background students like myself, and we look at where they end up working as doctors. So we had a massive data set of about 15 years worth of data for practice location of these graduates. And I think the first few weeks of the project were just cleaning the data and sorting all of that out so that we could do our analysis. So I guess without sounding too dramatic, like, it was quite soul destroying. But after that, it was absolutely worth it. The results were really reassuring. We found that the rural clinical school graduates and those with rural background were almost twice as likely to come back and work in rural and regional areas. And one other really interesting thing we found was that those who did a rural clinical school experience, like being in Orange or Dubbo or Lismore, we found that a big proportion of them did internship and residency in rural areas. But then naturally you see a bit of a drop after PGY3 where graduates are moving back to Sydney and to get to tertiary hospitals for training programs. But then the most interesting thing was after PGY8, you see this increase again where it's those graduates that are actually coming back again once they've specialised. So they're coming back and working as specialists here in places like Orange or Dubbo. So it's really exciting kind of results, and it really validates, what we do here in the rural clinical school. And it's very exciting. And I think sometimes there's some rumours flying around that maybe we are at a disadvantage when it comes to training programs and to specialising. But one of the things we did find in this research was that there was no disadvantage in how long it took for those with rural clinical school placement to achieve their specialty, which is just great for us as rural students. So as a whole, I think the project was just really satisfying to be a part of.
Such worthwhile research. That's amazing. Lizzie, what is it about medicine that you think you could just never prepare for?
Yeah, there's a few things. Actually, there's a lot of things in medicine that you can't really prepare for. I do think for me especially is you can never really prepare for the amount of content that you need to learn. So it's no secret that medicine is a content heavy degree. But I think one thing that I do wish that I knew going in was how important it is to prioritize what you learn, and how you need to be comfortable sometimes with not being the knowledge on everything, and sometimes it's okay to get things wrong. Sometimes it's okay to learn from mistakes. And yeah, I think there's a lot of perfectionists and type A personalities floating around in medicine. So that's a pretty tough thing to be comfortable with. And it's certainly something I didn't pick up quickly. I think that kind of prioritizing my learning is something I've maybe not even perfected. I think I'm still getting good at it. And I think in fourth year, I'm trying to prioritize things that, learning things that are going to help me be a good intern and a good resident. And, I think it's a skill that you do learn gradually, but you certainly can't prepare for it.
And finally, Lizzie, with your experience to date, what is one piece of advice that you would give for people thinking about a rural placement?
I think going rural is one of the most important things you can do, even if it's just a 4-week block for, your elective placement. But if you have the opportunity to get out here and do 1 or 2 years, definitely do it. I think people are passionate about rural health, but I think even if you wanted to work in metropolitan areas, it's really good just to have that rural context. I think understanding what people's priorities are here in the country, sometimes farmers just can't leave the farm. It's really tough to get away. All they want to do is get home. And I think coming out here and interacting with those kinds of people is really important for if you're going to treat them somewhere like St. Vincent's, having that understanding of why they want to get back home or, what their social context is back here. And I think that kind of thing is really important to learn, not just as a student, but even if you can get placements out here throughout your career when you're training is really important and super beneficial for rural patients.
And what about that idea of less people gives you more opportunity for more hands on deck? You're almost getting an intensive learning experience, which you might not get in a city or metro environment.
Yeah, very much so. I think I've certainly benefited from that hands-on experience that you get out here. I mean, having been here for 12 months already, I did things like my anaesthetics term here, and now this block I happen to be on surgery. So even just knowing the anaesthetists on the other side of the theatre is really helpful. So because they know you, they'll come and get you to do some cannulas, or they might get you to bag the patient. So because you know people, because it's that small community, you've always got these great opportunities to kind of work on your skills. So I'm really grateful for this small community and this good community that we do have here at the hospital.
That was medical student Lizzie Del Gigante, who's studying at the University of Sydney School of Rural Health, based in Orange. This is Destination Medicine. Thanks for listening. Regional training hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.